or also refer them, to other agencies to get assistance. A recently separated veteran who's been unemployed for 26 weeks in a 12-month period. Now, the question is, what does recently separated veteran mean? It means veteran has been separated within the last 3 years. That's considered a recently separated veteran.
You mean ended his military service?
Right, wherever it ended, 3 years from that date. Okay? If that individual's been unemployed for 26 weeks, any time within a 12-month period, they're eligible to see our Disabled Veterans Outreach Program specialist. An ex-offender. Any veteran that has spent time in prison or a correctional facility. Now, we have partnered with the Department of Corrections for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Every month, I get a list of every veteran that is incarcerated in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I get 3 dates. I know who they are, where they're incarcerated, what their felony was, what got them there. I know 3 dates. These are 3 possible release dates for this individual. What we like to do is a lot of times our Disabled Veterans Outreach Program specialist will go to the prison or the correctional facility to sit down and try to meet with this individual to start the process of getting them ready to find a job. Because they're the hardest people to place. They are really hard to place. Now, do we run into problems? Yeah. A lot of times, sometimes the correctional facility won't let us in. Or the jail won't let us in. So we keep plugging away at it. I mean, we've had some successes. We have some of these DVOPs that are in tight with the correctional facilities, and they're in there all the time. But that's one of the things we're doing. Now, one of the things that a veteran is told, when you get out, go see the Career Center because we have this individual sitting there that can help you. And a lot of times the veterans on parole, they don't have a lot of time to find a job. And that's one of the things that local veterans employment reps doing is out there finding employers that are willing to take an ex-offender. Okay?
Question.
Yes, sir.
When an offender goes into jail, he loses his VA benefits all but 10%.
Right.
Does the DVOP start processing to get that reinstated?
No, the VA does that. You will find the VA has a person that they travel around, and that's what they do. They assist them in getting there. And a lot of times, we will have the DVOP will actually tie in with that VA representative in order to get into that prison. Okay, because the VA person can get in all the time. Sometimes we tag along with that person so we can get in. Okay, but no, that's done by them. What we have is we have a manual we've put together and put out for all of our DVOPs when it comes to ex-offenders that when that individual shows up, these are the following things you need to do. You got to get them an ID card. You got to get them, if they're allowed to drive, you got to get the driver's license reinstated. You got to get a lot of things done very, very quickly. Okay, not only finding a place for them to stay, but finding employment for them. So there's a whole thick handbook that we have that our DVOPs use whenever we get an ex-offender coming out because we don't have a lot of time to deal with them. Most of the time it's 90 days or you're back in. A lot of times that's their parole. You got to find this within 90 days. And one of the things we like to do is talk to the parole officer because we need to know what the conditions of that parole are. Because the last thing we want to do is find this individual a job that violates their parole. So we'd like to tie in with the parole officer and say, okay, what are the conditions of the parole so we can start working with this individual. If they lack a high school diploma or a GED, they can come to see us. And one of the first things we're going to do is probably send them over to adult ed and start the process of getting a GED. Low income. Basically, what low income means is this varies by region within the state. Some low income, it's based on your income and the number of dependents you have, number of family members, based upon your income. If you fall into one of those income categories, then the Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialist will be able to work with you. 18 to 24-year-old. What was that?
That was
okay.
Another mic muted.
Okay. Thought somebody was breaking in for a question.
No.
18 to 24-year-olds. Now, this category was specially designated by the Secretary of Labor. The Secretary said, hey, I want 18 to 24-year-old veterans seen by the Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialist. Why did the Secretary do that, do you think? because that category of veterans has the highest unemployment rate of all other categories of veterans. They are above the national average. So we work with them. Transitioning service members who do not meet career readiness standards. Basically, they put a new law in place a couple years back that said every veteran getting out of the service must go through the transition process. What does that mean? There's a 3-day Department of Labor career workshop that every military person has to go through. They have to. And this is starting the process of transitioning them at how to write resumes, the language, how to dress. There's all kinds of things that are involved, and it's crammed into 3 days. But they get this sheet of paper. They basically have all these things they have to do before they get out. All right, and they will have what we call a capstone event, and they do it at all the bases, which is where everybody who's getting out during this particular program comes through with their sheet to see whether or not they've completed all these standards. If they are not ready, then they will be referred to the Career Center, to the DBOP, because the commander of that individual has to sign off on that this individual is ready to transition out. And if they're not, there is a process that takes place where they are sent to the Career Center and we start working with them. And transitioning service members who are wounded, ill, or injured, okay, that are receiving treatment at a military treatment facility or a warrior transition unit, and the caregivers of those wounded, ill, or service members. So basically, we used to have a warrior transition unit in Fort Knox. That has since closed. There is a military treatment facility or a warrior transition unit at Fort Campbell. Okay, so we have our Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialist goes over there to meet with those individuals. As they get transitioned out, we're working with them, especially if they're coming back to Kentucky. We're going to work with them. All right, and if we have a spouse who is the caregiver to that veteran, we're working with that individual too. Even though that individual may not be a veteran, they're authorized because they are the caregiver. So we are working with them also. Okay? These are the conditions that a veteran, if they meet one of these, fall into one of these categories, they get to see the DBOP. What does a disabled veteran do? What's he do? He maintains a list of all those organizations, federal, state, local, civic, that provide some kind of service that he can reference a veteran to. He can refer him over there. He has a list. Some of the lists that our DBOPs have is 1,500 lines long. Okay, everything from a suit to glasses. I mean, if they'll provide it, we're gonna have you on a list. It'll visit homeless shelters, VA hospitals, soup kitchens, and any location where a veteran that would need some kind of services might be found. We've even found them under the bridge. Okay? We'll go out and we'll start looking. And if you remember that the VA program, what it is now, there's actually a memorandum of understanding where if an individual veteran is going through the Chapter 31 program, before they start, they come to see us to get labor market information. We're basically saying, hey, you want to go get this degree? Well, we ain't got this here. This doesn't exist here. You may want to look at something else, but we're going to give you the information. And then once that individual is ready to go to work, they're sending them back to us so that we can start the process of helping them find employment, and they will be working with that Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialist. These are some of the things that they do. How do you get there? And I can't use my red line because they say they can't see it, so I'll try to explain it. If you come in intake, if they ask you, when you come into our Career Center, one of the questions they're going to ask you, are you a veteran? Have you served in the military or the National Guard or Reserves? That's the first question you're going to get. If you answer that question no, then you're going over there what we call WP Core Services, which is nothing more than Wagner Pizer, which is the rest of the Career Center staff. It's the grant that pays them. It's called the Wagner Pizer grant. You're going to get job referrals. You're going to get job search information. You're going to be shown how to use certain things registered in the system and so forth. If you answer, yes, I'm a veteran, then you're going to get a sheet. And all those 9 categories, we're asking questions to determine whether or not you fit in one of those 9 categories. If you do not, you'll notice you're going back over to the Wagner Pizer staff. But guess what? Remember the priority of service law? When we get you back over there, you're going to the head of the line. because priority service says you get it before anybody else. So even if you don't make that, you're going over there and you're going to get priority. If the answer to that question is yes, you do meet one of those categories, you're going down to where the DBOP is located. That individual is going to start working with you. And you'll notice he may send you over because you've got job ready, so you're getting a referral. They may send you down to the partner agencies because you need them to do something to assist you, or you could get referred to that local veterans employment rep. The DBOP say, hey, I got this guy coming out, or I got this veteran coming out that has this type of skill set. Start looking for a business that handles this type of skill set. Here's a resume. Go to town. What's the leaver going to do? Going to go out and start trying to hunt down a spot to make that match, to put that match together. Okay? Now, let's say the veteran is over at the core services. They get the services. They're ready. They get sent over. You know, they get a referral. They go. Or if they need, they can get referred to a partner agency from there. So this is how veterans kind of flow through the Career Center. And they're very good at this. The Career Centers are very good at this because, oh, by the way, one of the responsibilities of that lever is to make sure that veterans are getting priority in the Career Centers that fall within his area. That's another one of his responsibilities because every quarter he answers to me. He has a bunch of stuff he has to fill out this report that comes into me that I have to forward to the Department of Labor. So that's one of the things they're looking out for. Is this in fact occurring? That's one of their duties. Now, what does a DBOP do with a veteran? Now, I want to make this clear. We use a case management approach. This is not the same as a social worker. It is not that in-depth, okay? So when I say case management approach, I'm just talking about some of the things that are done. Do not confuse this with, you know, the training a social worker gets. It's not the same, okay? We'll use that. What we're talking about there is we're going to conduct an assessment. But we're only looking at employment. We're not looking at the whole family situation and whether or not you need this assistance or that. That's somebody else's job. We'll probably make a referral to those people, okay? But we're looking at the employment. We're just looking at what do you have that's keeping you from getting a job. That's where we're looking at it. We'll help develop what we call an individual employment plan. Basically, it's going to consist of what our objectives are, what the barriers are, how are we going to attack getting these barriers, and what timelines do we think we can get it done, and who's going to do it, okay? He'll maintain notes, case notes. Just like a regular, you know, a caseworker, there's case notes in there that we look at to say, hey, what are you doing? Because what we're trying to determine at my level is, here's your plan, is what you're doing supporting what the barriers are. If this is the barrier, everything you're doing should be supporting getting rid of that barrier. And we'll go over that, we'll look at it, and if it's not, we're going to let them know, hey, you know, something's not right here. And follow-up services. If we get a veteran a job, that DBOP will follow up with that veteran for 60 days to make sure, hey, you still employed? Everything's still good? We'll follow up with them. Do you need anything else? This is the type of things that specialist does. They'll refer veterans to partners or other service providers. Hey, this individual needs this place provides it, we're going to send them over there to get it. And they'll notify the lever if the individual is ready to go to work so the lever can start looking and try to find them. Basically, you can think of a DBOP if you think of a wheel that has all these spokes going out. The DBOP is the hub. The individual comes into the DBOP at the hub and they send them out these various spokes to these various different agencies, and this is not all of them, there's just some of them. Sends them out there to get the service they need, then they come back to the DBOP. So it's just like a wheel. That's the best analogy I have for it. Now, some of the skills issues we run into. Language. How many of you heard about that? Language. Let me tell you about language. I'm going to say personnel. What does that mean to somebody in the business community? That's that office that has those, you know, those HR people in it. Okay, they do all this funny stuff. Well, to a veteran, personnel is the people that work for me. Okay, they're my personnel. All right, so that kind of creates a little bit of a problem, you know. So there's some language issues there. You know, the other thing is, well, I'm a platoon sergeant for an armor platoon. Okay, what does that translate into, really? You know, what is that? In the business community, you say that to somebody, they're like, huh? I mean, I know what it is. Bruce back there knows what it is. But if you're not a veteran, you don't know what it is. This gentleman back here knows what it is because he's been a veteran. But anybody else, you're like, huh? What's that? So that's an issue with veterans because they're going to talk, they're going to put down the stuff, this is what I did. I was this. Or you'll get this great and wonderful thing on a resume that says, responsible for the health, welfare, and maintenance of 50 personnel and all associated equipment. Okay, I know what that means. Do you know what that means? You know, you'll take a guess at it. So those are things we have to do. We have to get them into what is the business language. What is it that you did? How does that translate into business language? Okay, they get a little bit of that when they get out in that transition course. We have to kind of keep it going. You'd be amazed at some of the resumes that we see. We have to help them identify transferable skills. A lot of times they say, well, I was just an infantryman. That's all I did. I was a machine gunner. Well, you know what, guy? There's a lot of different things that you did that, you know, first of all, did you maintain that piece of equipment? Yeah. Did you have to use a manual? Oh, yes, it did. Well, guess what? You can now read and understand instructions. You know, you can use a manual. Well, did you ever use a GPS system, a global positioning system? Yes. Well, guess what? Now you're working with technology. Did you ever use the frequency hopping radio and have to program that sucker? Well, yeah, I did. Everybody does. Well, guess what? Those are skills. You just have to be able to get them to tell you and then show them that, yeah, I did this. This is a skill. Were you ever in charge of people to get something done? Oh, yeah. Well, you've got a little bit of supervisory skills sitting there, you know. Did you have to plan it? Did you have to organize it? You have to work with them. You have to try to get this done. And sometimes that's difficult. Resume writing. You don't write resumes in the military. You don't write that. You don't even interview. You're just told, here you are, there you go. Okay, you're doing this now. Okay, you know, that's what you do. So we have to help them write the resume. I mean, like I say, you can't be a platoon sergeant and send it over to IBM and say, hey, I was a platoon sergeant for an IT platoon. That ain't going to work. Just not going to happen. So we have to help them with the resumes. And the language, we use a lot of, like I said DOL earlier, you know, and we use a lot of these, you know, all these little abbreviations and stuff. You know, I work with the OET, you know, and veterans will say things like, well, I was a TGAT instructor. Okay, I know what that means, but nobody else does. Okay. Job search technique. You don't research your job in the service. They just give it to you. So the one thing a lot of veterans don't understand is, yeah, you may have the skills to that company, but you need to research that company. Find out information about that organization that you want to apply to, because when you go sit down in front of that individual, guess what? If you've researched them, you can talk to them. You know what you want to say. Networking. Hey, I will tell you, the veterans today are better at that than my generation, because they're doing Facebook. I don't. They're doing Twitter. I don't. Like I like to say, I don't tweet, post, snap, vid, or chat. Okay? That's not who I am. But they are doing it. But you get a lot of older veterans in that don't understand networking. And so you got to help them. You know, this is how you get it. You know, you'll get a veteran and say, well, man, I put out 25 resumes out on Career Builder. Didn't get a hit. Well, you probably aren't going to get a hit because you need to network. Okay? Networking. Interviewing. Mannerisms. Confidence versus arrogance. When I say mannerisms, when veterans are sitting down in front of promotion boards or Soldier of the Month boards, all these special boards, guess what? It's, I'm looking right at you and I ain't moving. Okay? I'm as stiff as a board, straight up, because that's what you expect me to be. All right? I'm going to give you the answer. I'm going to look you in the face and give it to you. All right? Okay. Does that work when you're interviewing with a company? Probably doesn't go over so well, because you need to show yourself as being more personable. So we got to get them out of that. Okay? Confidence versus arrogance. You ask a veteran, can you do that? Yes, I can. Not a problem. Even if the individual has no clue, because they're going to figure out how to do it. You ask a veteran, where do you think you should be in 5 years? He's going to tell you, your job. Okay? That's what he's going to say. That's what that veteran is going to say. Because that's how they were raised. That's how they were trained. Because that's the confidence piece. Okay? Because you got to have a lot of confidence if you're going to lead people. You know, you got to. But a lot of times in the business community, they kind of view that as arrogant. So we have to try to get them, you know, yeah, you can say things like that, but you got to tone it down. You got to couch it in a different language so that you get that across. Okay? But they'll do that. And we have to work with them on that. You ever see a veteran off duty? Most veterans, yeah, polo shirts, jeans. Hey, I've had interviews already where they showed up in overalls. I'm like, you're kidding me, right? Okay. Well, they have two types of dress. Most people think, a lot of times a good veteran will buy a nice suit. Okay, well, a nice suit is great, but it doesn't fit every occasion. I mean, did you ever see anybody interviewing on a job site, a construction site, wearing a suit? Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Doesn't look real good. So a lot of times, if they do the research, they find out what is the standard dress for a particular company. Like if it's IBM, it's a white shirt. It's a white shirt and black pants. So you probably should go in a white shirt and black pants. You see? So we have to work with them a little bit on that. Make sure they understand that a suit doesn't fit every occasion. All right? It's okay to wear work boots to a work site. Social media accounts and email addresses. A lot of young veterans understand how to put social media accounts together, but you should see some of their email addresses. Oh my God. It's like I'm drunk daily at gmail.com. It's probably not something you want to put on a resume. And we'll see them, sexy69 at hotbody. No, you don't want that stuff. And we see this on resumes. Bruce is laughing, but he knows. He's seen it. Okay? And so you're sitting there going, you might want to you might want to get a new email account and get off of that. Okay? Plus we tell them, what is on your Facebook account? What have you got sitting out there? Because, oh, by the way, that business is going to go look at your Facebook account, and you know what? That could make or break you. So we have to talk to them about that, especially the younger veterans. Showing your party and half drunk, slobbing over the bed is probably not something you want on Facebook when you're trying to apply for this business. So we have to talk to them about that. Interpersonal skills. This is more your senior level veterans, people who've been in the service for a while, people like me. Okay? I spent 28 years. I was a sergeant major. I didn't ask people to do anything. I told them what I wanted them to do. Okay? So when you get out into the business community, that doesn't go over quite so well. So, a lot of times they'll get a job and then they're going to have a lot of problems because they're stuck into you will do this other than will you do this. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's there. It's there. And it takes a lot of work to get out of that mindset of you will do this and what you're telling me what? You're not going to do what? There's a big difference there because that's not what they're used to seeing or hearing. Okay. And compensation, unrealistic expectation, because guess what? We don't pay for medical. We don't pay for retirement. We get vacation. We don't get sick days, but we just go to sick call. If they tell us we don't work that day, we don't work. So this is what we're used to. When you get out now, they sit there and go, well, I should get $65,000 a year because I can do this. Okay, well, when you find that job, please tell me about it so I can let other people know. Because they don't really get that whole total, the medical, the retirement, all that's part of a compensation package. So a lot of times you have to explain that to them. It's like, well, they're only offering me $36,000. Yeah, but what are they offering you for medical and retirement and disability and so forth? What kind of vacation time? That's all part of that. You see, and sometimes they struggle with that because it's not something they're used to. We never had to do it. Priority versus preference. A lot of veterans know that, hey, I got preference. I got preference. And they think preference is the business community has to hire me. No. Preference means in the federal government that you will get some kind of preference, either you get to apply for jobs like if you're a disabled veteran, you can apply for a job even if it's closed to only, those federal workers. As a disabled veteran, your preference allows you to go right straight in there. Okay? In the state, we have preference that says if we have 5 veterans on a register, you got to offer an interview to all 5 of them. If there are less than 5, you got to offer it to all of them. Okay? Those are preferences. Priority just means that when you go into a career center, you get to go in front of everybody else. A lot of times they don't really totally understand that, and you have to explain it to them because they heard, yeah, you got preference. Oh, okay. But they didn't hear the rest of it in federal hiring. Okay? They didn't hear it. So anyway, position. A lot of times they say, well, you know what? I was a leader in the thing. I should be middle management here. Well, the question is, what do you know about that particular industry? What do you know about running a plastic injection molding assembly line? Probably not a lot. So we try to tell them, you know what, if they offer you an entry-level position because of your knowledge and your skills and your ability at supervising, you're going to move up fairly quickly because you're going to demonstrate that stuff. So don't be afraid to take a position that's a little bit lower than what you think you should have because business is looking at How do I bring you along? Okay? And that concludes my portion. Yes, sir.
I have a question from the beginning that I wanted to ask earlier, but I didn't want to slow things down. It's about employer benefits. Say an employer hires a veteran, but he didn't hire them through your center. Are they still eligible for the tax
Yes.
credits? and
Yes.
benefits?
Yes.
They have to come to your office to apply?
No, they do it online.
Can you repeat the question for the people?
Okay, what he asked was, if a veteran is hired by a business, but it didn't come through our career center and we had no part in it, can they still get the tax credits? The answer to that question is yes.
Well, not just the tax credit, there's other benefits as well.
Well, the OJT, if we don't know about it, we can't help you with
Okay.
it. But if you do that, like I say, one of the things is for us to provide certain things to you, like the OJT money, they have to be in our system. If you've already hired them, well, then you may not get that, but you can still get the work opportunity tax credit because you apply for that online.
Okay.
That comes through online. You do not have to work through us, to hire the person. You just have to apply through the Office of Employment and Training, the work opportunity tax credit section, to get that benefit.
But if they haven't hired the employee yet, they're thinking about they could approach.
Yeah, oh yeah, they could send the employee over to us. We could register it knowing that because what that does for us is that gives us a hire.
Right.
You see, we're looked at is, how many veterans did we see? How many veterans were eligible to be hired? How many did you get hired? That equals a percentage. And the Department of Labor holds us to a specific percentage. It's called 64%. Give or take a few percentage points based upon some other things, but 64 is the magic number. So they're expecting us in the career centers, 64% of all the veterans come through your door should leave with a job if they're eligible. Now, what keeps them from being eligible is if they're involved in case management, they're working with a DBOP, they're doing all these other things. But yeah, 64 is the magic number.
Question. When you work with a civilian employer and you're using the OJT funds and they're getting this benefit of the worker for up to 6 months, if they do not hire at the end of the 6-month period, is there any recourse for you guys against that employer since you've invested these funds? Or is it just?
Not an immediate recourse, no. No. But it is if the individual uses the OJT and doesn't hire the veteran, do we have recourse against that employer? No, we do not. Okay. However, you know what? Our memory is very long. Especially if Bruce was the one that worked with them and tried to set all that up, and it turns around Bruce is back out again with the same individual. Do you think Bruce is going back to that same company? Think Bruce is going to talk to him about that again? If he does, he's going to bring up the fact that, hey, wait a minute here. But our experience is that in 99% of the cases, that veteran is getting hired because all they're doing is using that as a training period. And if the veteran doesn't get hired, most of the times because the veteran did something stupid, okay, didn't show up for work or whatever. So that's been our experience. Like I say, the leavers that are out there doing that, they're very good at knowing this is going to work or this isn't going to work. Because remember I told you, they're trying to match the veteran to the culture, and the climate. That's what they're doing. They're trying to make that appropriate match. Because if you get the right veteran to the right business, you benefit both. Anything else?
Additional question.
Okay.
I'm a disabled American veterans benefits counselor. A lot of the young people that I see nowadays come to me with the complaint of, I am working for the civilian employer. However, I have been diagnosed with mental issues and I'm required to go to VA appointments 2-3 times a week. Now my employers say, tough luck, Charlie, I don't need you anymore. Is there anything that you work with the employers that say, look, some of these folks are going to have some medical issues that need to be addressed as you're working and getting them trained and up to speed? Is that a problem for you folks?
No, because the guy that's coming behind me deals with that.
Okay.
He's the one who deals with that. If we have issues like that, we're saying, hey, you may want to go talk to this business because that's what he does. That's what their organization does.
I'll wait to his.
Yes. I'm glad that was a great lead in. That was a great lead in for him. Sir?
Two more questions. We don't have any questions online.